Hello, and welcome to Books on Tap Live from Publishers Weekly. I'm Emma Cantor, Deputy Children's Book Editor at PW. Joining me today is author Dana L. Davis. She is the author of the new YA novel Roman and Jewel, which is out now from Inkyard Press. Inkyard is sponsoring this event. Happy New Year, and thanks for joining me, Dana.
Happy New Year. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, welcome. And before we dive in, I have a few announcements. We're giving away a limited number of copies of Roman and Jewel. And to enter for a chance to win, you can go to publishersweekly.com/Davis. We're also dropping that link into the comments section on Facebook and YouTube. Viewers can also submit their questions for Dana in the comment section, again, on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible later in the interview. Finally, to keep up to date on future events in the series, sign up at publishersweekly.com/booksontap-live. And now on to the fun part. So where are you joining us from, Dana?
I am joining you from Burbank, California, which is basically Los Angeles. So
Great. And how are you doing? There's so much going on in the world, even just today.
Yeah, we're doing good. It's just my daughter and I. So mostly it's just lots of writing and homeschool and repeat. So that's pretty much how we're doing.
Very good. And can you talk about the origins of this Romeo and Juliet inspired love story?
Sure. It's kind of a really long story that I'll try to tell in a short version. But basically, I had just finished my second YA novel, The Voice in My Head, and I got writer's block for about 5 or 6, maybe even 7 months. And for a person who writes as a living, having writer's block, it's such a hard thing to deal with. You just start to beat yourself up. But one of my main rules with writer's block is to not write. I never force myself to write. I always take the time away. And so what I was doing with my time away was I was just listening to music. Now, mind you, I was feeling really bad about myself, but all I was doing was listening to Broadway songs on YouTube. And I became infatuated with a particular musical, a reboot of a musical called Once on This Island that I did when I was in college. And so as I started learning more about the musical, I found out that the lead actress, Haley Kilgore, had to take some time away from an injury, and the understudy took over her role on Broadway. And I just started to get this idea of what's the story of the understudy. And so that was sort of like the first seed for Roman and Jewel. And at the time, I wanted to do a reimagining of Romeo and Juliet. And my agent was like, hey, I'm on board if you can have a clever twist to it. And so it was just like Broadway. It has to be Broadway. And so I came up with the reincarnation element because I just love the idea of Romeo and Juliet getting a second chance. Like, let's not give up on these characters. Like, let's bring them back. And so that's sort of the short version of how the story came to be.
So you had your concept, and then Jersey James was born. How do you think she emerged as such a unique protagonist?
Well, a lot of things came together to make Jersey. I actually have a really close friend who was a cover on Broadway. And he's one of the most talented actors I know. And it was just so interesting to get his perspective of someone so talented. Basically, day after day, their job is to sit and wait. And in this particular person's case, he never went on. The lead actor never missed a show. And so my super talented friend was basically, 6 months in New York, sitting in the backstages of, a theater. And so I just became so compelled to tell the story of someone who has what it takes, right, to be like the best and to have their moment to shine. And what happens when you're just so close? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And I sort of wanted to tell that story, like, because so often that happens to us, you know, something amazing is just almost there. And so we have to find the truth and the beauty in our experience as for what it is. And I really wanted to make Jersey James more than just a girl who wanted to be famous. I mean, this is a girl who has like a heart and passion for music. She studied music all her life. She writes music. She's skilled in like music theory. And so I wanted to add some depth to her and some depth to like, what is Broadway and like, why are people so drawn to it, you know? So that's sort of how Jersey was born.
Well, that Broadway setting and the behind the scenes excitement of putting on a show really jumps off the page. How did you come about to bring that to life?
Well, I mean, it helps that I'm an actor, and it also helps that I got a chance to go to New York and spend some time watching shows and to go backstage. And just like my life has been spent on stage. I started doing theater when I was 7 years old. And there's something so magical about theater. There's something so magical about live performing. And so, yeah, and told through the lens of like a Broadway, which is so larger than life. I mean, it like touches the world. And I think so many people have wanted to like, including myself, like to get a backstage view of Broadway. So I thought this would be such an amazing opportunity to tell that story.
Right. It's great how you show that the action happening off stage is sometimes even more compelling and intriguing than the scene they're working on at that time. So in Roman and Jewel, you describe the cast as very diverse, both on and off the stage. I'm wondering, could you talk about the importance of inclusive representation?
Absolutely. I think we've come a long way. I mean, we've come a really long way. But I think that when I, like, for example, when I graduated from college in from high school in 1997, as an actor, I had an option of like going to New York City and pursuing Broadway, or coming to Los Angeles and pursuing a career on screen. And so I think one of the reasons that I chose Los Angeles over New York City was that I didn't really see a place for me. I didn't really see a place for, at the time, like a young Black girl on Broadway. Now, have we like grown and made changes? Yes. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. And I think that we all want to sort of jump on that bandwagon and keep it going. But we've come from a place where there wasn't always a place for girls that looked like me. And so I just really thought that it was amazing to tell the story of a young Black girl, even though Jersey James isn't cast as the lead is a Black girl. And it is a diverse musical. And I think I was so inspired by Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton, because when I had like a really amazing opportunity, or like a situation with Hamilton, which is like, I didn't know what Hamilton was. And I'm like a huge musical theater nerd, but it just so happened that Hamilton came out during a time in my life where I was really busy with parenting and work. And so I didn't know anything about it. And so my mom was like, hey, I'm gonna watch Cam. I want you to go to the theater. Like you need some time to yourself. And so I saw what was playing at the Pantages in LA, and it was Hamilton. And I was like, oh, everyone's talking about Hamilton. I literally have no idea what it is. So I went to see Hamilton, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching this show, and I'm just like blown away. The moment when George Washington comes out and they're singing that song, like Here Comes the General. And I realized that this actor who I saw on the stage before is actually playing George Washington, and he's Black. And I mean, I just burst into tears. I was like, why haven't we done this before? Like, it was just so beautiful and so amazing. And I just want to keep that up, you know, with reminding people that skin color is, I mean, it's just melanin, right? We're just telling stories, and we're telling them the best and most authentic way that we can. So.
It's amazing you had that experience to see the show live and really come to it fresh like that.
Yeah, it's something I'll never forget. Like every time I listen to Here Comes the General, I still have that moment where I sit up in my seat and I'm like, what? So yeah.
You mentioned earlier that reincarnation has a role in the hip opera plot. And there's also a little bit of that feeling in the romance that develops between Jersey and Zeppelin. I'm curious, are you a believer? What inspired that?
Um, it what inspired it is basically I wanted to give a little bit more depth to insta love. I mean, people are super critical of stories with insta love, but the truth is that it happens all the time. So often we see someone and we're instantly drawn to them. We're instantly attracted to them. I don't think there's probably no person like on this planet, like an adult, that hasn't had that moment where you see someone and you're just like, I feel drawn to this person. So I just became obsessed with like, let's make insta love, let's add some depth to it. Like, even if we're just hinting at it and we're not coming out and saying, this is why, like, when I look at you, I feel butterflies. Even hinting at it was enough for me. Do I believe in the concept of reincarnation? I do, for my spiritual beliefs, I do. But I had a lot of fun with it, just hinting at it in the book and, making it because when we watch Romeo and Juliet, I actually just watched it over the holiday. It's so sad. I mean, Romeo and Juliet is one of the greatest love stories ever told, but oh my goodness, it's heartbreaking. So I just love the idea of like a fresh start for these two, like them getting to the other side and like in this mythical world, like this tribunal of judges being like, guess what you guys are doing? Back to Earth, and you're going to try to get it right this time. So.
That's so true. And we know even from the prologue that they're both doomed.
Yes.
But it's great how you offer that different outcome. I won't spoil anything. Yeah. You depict the complex relationship between Jersey and the superstar Cindy, who she is understudying for. What were you hoping to convey about female power dynamics or competition versus friendship?
I guess the story that I wanted to tell is that it's tricky when you're in the industry, when you're in the entertainment industry and almost like doesn't count. If you almost get the part, it doesn't matter. You just didn't get the part at the end of the day. And that can be kind of heartbreaking for a lot of actors because it's not that you're not good. It's not that you're not great. I mean, it's honestly not that you're not amazing. It's just that someone else fit better the producers or the network or studio's idea of like this character. And so so often you have like these hurt feelings, like these heart crushing feelings. And you have these relationships with these other actors. I mean, as in my experience as an actor, I go to audition after audition and I run into these girls and you become close to them. You become friends with them. Your journey becomes their journey. And oftentimes you're up for the same part and you see they got the part, you see their success with it. And you have to find peace with it. I think when you're younger, it can be super catty. And I think that's the story that we tell at the beginning of Roman and Jewel. And I don't want to give anything away. But I think in life, you have to find peace with it. And you have to find peace with like one person's journey is their earned journey and like finding ways to be happy for someone instead of always feeling like, why wasn't it me? But knowing that everyone's on their own separate journey. And that's sort of what I wanted to tell with like competition and the fact that it just never stops. Like when you're in an industry, like acting on the stage or acting on TV.
Social media also plays a key role in the plot. After the video of Jersey and Zeppelin rehearsing goes viral with unexpected results, how do you see the main characters handling fame and success in different ways?
Well, that's an interesting question because I actually wanted to show that when you're working on something like a film or working on a musical or a play on Broadway, you're sort of in this bubble of like constant work. I mean, when you're shooting a film, it's probably like sometimes 14 to 17 hours a day on set. And so you're in this bubble and it seems like the world doesn't really exist, right? It just seems like you're working and you're connecting with your cast and your crew. So there's like two stories going on. There's a story of like everyone knows your name. And then there's a story of, yeah, but like I have to be at work at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so I sort of wanted to show that part of it. Like Jersey is like immersed in this world and she's immersed in this new, love that she's experiencing. But also like on the other side, there's this explosion of like fame and like people knowing her name happening. But I really wanted to concentrate on like the bubble in this story.
In addition, Jersey's family offers a lot of guidance and support in their own way. Was that based on your own support network? What were you pulling from there?
Yeah, I think that in my stories, Tiffany Sly Lives Here Now, if you read my books, The Voice in My Head, I'm really big on family. And I think one of the reasons that I'm big on family is that I think there's been a disservice to people of color in storytelling, and that it's sort of, there's a go-to narrative and a go-to sort of a stereotype of what to expect with a Black character. And so I'm always anxious to tell the stories of many Black characters from, different perspectives. Like we as Black people don't have one story. We have many stories. And so I get so excited when I'm writing a book because I get to tell many stories, not just Jersey's story. We have her brother, Judas, who has dreams of Wall Street. We have her aunt who works in fashion and lives in like $1 million brownstone. We have her dad who is a music teacher. I was so excited to tell not just Jersey's story, but other Black stories, other stories of Black characters. And I do that with every book of mine. And I don't think there's any better way than to like bring in the family.
Like your heroine, as you mentioned, you are an experienced and accomplished actor in your own right. How much of yourself do you think made it into Jersey's character?
I think that the story was sort of drawn from a personal experience of mine. I think Jersey was way more confident than I was. I mean, when I came out to LA, I was just sort of like so overwhelmed and like, what am I doing? And Jersey knows exactly what she wants. And so that's all Jersey, not really me. But I actually had an experience when I was a young actor where I auditioned for a project and went through the audition process, and the director chose me as his choice for the project, And I ended up not getting the part because the studio wanted to hire someone more famous. And it was such a heartbreaking experience for me. And so that was like the seed of Jersey, of me trying, like in my journey of finding peace with that. And years later, looking back on it and being like, that was for the best. It wasn't my part to get. And I wanted to like share that story with other people, that sometimes we can look at things, but with fresh eyes or a different perspective, we can find beauty and truth in our experience. And growth too, like definitely growth.
And what led you to pursue writing in addition to your performing?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that I was overwhelmed and disappointed with Hollywood and the stereotypes for African American women, especially with the colorism in Hollywood and the fact that I'm a dark-skinned African American woman, and so my journey is different. And I was just disenchanted with the roles that I was getting and the way that they were depicting Black women. And I felt like the pressure to be what this was on the page, even though I didn't think it was authentic or real or matched like my experience of Black women. And so I got tired of feeling like a victim. And I was like, I want to be the change that I wish to see in the world. And I know that's super cliche, but I had to find a way to like take back my power. And I thought, what better way than to start creating myself? And so I thought, what better way than to start with our youth and start like working hard to break down these stereotypes so that young girls like me never have that experience where they don't see themselves on the covers of books, or they don't see themselves starring in TV shows and in movies, telling their stories, you know, like a girl who loves Broadway. Black people love Broadway. Black people are on Broadway. So why can't we tell that story? Black people love stories. Why can't we have a love story? Romeo and Juliet, you know, every person in my family loves Romeo and Juliet. So why can't we tell that story? Why can't we reimagine it with Black characters?
Absolutely. And how would you compare your path to breaking into publishing with your journey busting into TV and film? Were there similar challenges?
Well, I think the journey is similar in that the journey is ongoing. You never sort of, I don't think there's any actor who's just like, guess what, I've made it, I'm here. I don't think there's any actor like that. I don't even care how famous you are, because it's art and you always want to create art and do more amazing things. And that's the way it is for publishing as well. I mean, one book comes out and it's so exciting and you want to celebrate. But what you find yourself doing is writing another story. We're constantly writing. So I see them similar in that it's just a journey and you have to really, really love it with all your heart to like stay on the journey, because it is like a roller coaster and there are parts of it that are extremely heartbreaking. But there are like extreme highs too. So as long as you're okay to ride the waves, I think both of the industries are very similar in that of the ways of the high highs, the low lows.
Do you feel that your work as a performer and a writer influence each other in any way?
I think I want to do the same. I want to tell the same stories of like normalizing the Black experience in my work as an actor. I'm quick to pass on stereotypical roles. I don't want to do them. And it's the same way with my writing. I want to normalize the Black experience where we're telling stories that aren't necessarily about issues, even though issues books are wonderful and amazing and I enjoy them. We also want to make sure and work hard that we don't have a go-to narrative for Black stories, and that Black girls and boys can fall in love and, you know, argue with their parents and audition for Broadway and, you know. And so I want to tell those stories in my writing, and I want to tell those stories as an actor as well.
And as a parent yourself, what are you hoping that young readers will take away from your stories?
As a parent, well, I hope that first of all that they're able to see the beauty in the Black experience, that they can relate to it. It's my stories aren't just for Black people. My stories are for people in general. My stories are like human stories. So one thing I write about like passionately, like for example, in my first book, Tiffany Sly Lives Here Now, I wrote about living with anxiety, like living after heartbreak. Like what happens after life breaks your heart? Like how does life look after that? And I really wanted people to walk away from it going like, oh, I have anxiety and that's okay. My second book, The Voice in My Head, was a mental illness was hinted at. You know, you had a girl who was hearing voices in her head. And that too, I also, you know, had a girl who thought she was hearing the voice of God. And so in that book, like the voice of God was like very normal. It wasn't like this booming voice that was like talking in a, you know, funny language. It was just like, the voice was just like you and me having a conversation. So like normalizing like our experience with God, like we don't have to like have any sort of fancy for those who believe in a higher power, we can just like say, hey, God, like, this isn't working for me. Like, and I want teens to be able to like look at things with a fresh perspective. And with Roman and Jewel, it's like that feeling of like, but it wasn't me. I didn't get the part. I wasn't good enough. Like, let's normalize like feeling jealous and feeling envious. Like, I just really want teens to walk away from my books, or anyone who reads my books, and say like, what I feel is okay. Like, it's okay what I feel. I'm on this life journey, and everything I feel is normal. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And speaking of reaching young people, I saw in your bio that you're also the founder of a nonprofit organization called Culture for Kids LA. Could you talk about your mission with that?
Sure. I just see so many work opportunities in my line of work, you know, and most of my crews on set are typically I wouldn't say all white crews, but mostly white crews. And I realized that a lot of children growing up in the inner city aren't aware of like the job opportunities in the industry. And so I wanted to create a foundation, not just to let them know about the job opportunities, but also to present theater and music to them, where in experiences that they might not be able to afford or have. So what we do is we go into schools, and like, for example, we took a group of kids to see a play or a musical at Pantages in LA. So it was Rock of Ages. So we went into the school and we taught them a little bit about Rock of Ages. We taught them about the musical. We taught them about like what they might expect to see. I mean, these are kids who have never been to the theater. And so when we get there, they get to see the orchestra pit. They get to look at the stage, and they get to also know that there's job opportunities like with these shows. And so we're exposing them to fine arts. And so that's sort of how the organization got created, with just my desire to like give these experiences to kids who might not otherwise be able to afford them.
That's so great. And have you had any especially meaningful or memorable encounters with those kids?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the funniest memories for me was the time we took the kids to see Rock of Ages, because like Hamilton, I hadn't seen Rock of Ages before and I didn't know a whole lot about Rock of Ages. So when it started, and it was just like, these were middle school kids, I just remember like looking over at the teachers and being like, I'm sorry. But it ended up being okay, even though there's language and there's some pretty mature storylines in Rock of Ages. The kids just ate it up and they loved it. But it was still fun. I'll never forget, like literally sweating and being like, oh my gosh, I brought these kids to see Rock of Ages. And I had no idea that it was like, you know, it had some mature content. So that was my fault, and I would never make that mistake again. But in retrospect, it worked out okay because the kids were like over the moon. So.
And obviously now with the pandemic, that has severely impacted all industries, but also film and theater with so many shutdowns. How has that touched your own experience?
Well, it's very sad. I mean, to know that Broadway has been dark for almost the longest time in history. I actually did a little tribute to Broadway. There's a video, if you want to check it out. It's a song that's mentioned in my book called I Think I Remember, which is basically like the moment that Roman and Jewel meet for the first time at a party, and they're both wondering like, why do you look so familiar? But I thought that I would sort of do this ode to Broadway because it's so important. I mean, it's so important to so many people, and so many people are employed because of Broadway, that it just meant a lot to me to be able to do sort of that art, and just like, you know, my little part to remind people that Broadway needs to return. Like, we need to return back to this art somehow, some way. It's affected my industry as well. I mean, right now we have a huge outbreak of COVID in Los Angeles, so productions are shut down. I just shot an episode of The Rookie in, I think it was November or October, and I've never had so many COVID tests. I mean, it was COVID tests twice a day. And it was scary to be on that set, even though I knew that they were taking all the proper precautions. But when that mask came off and I'm in the scene, it was a different feeling. And I just, it feels heartbreaking that we're in sort of like this new normal, but we do have to find peace with our new normal and do the best that we can. And so, we just try to do our part. Me and my daughter, we try to stay home as much as we can, social distance, wear a mask, because I know personally that people's like livelihoods are depending on it. They're depending on us to do the right thing.
Absolutely. Well, it's about time for us to pivot and look at audience questions for you. So some great ones came in. Let's start off with Alana Jolie Abbott. She would like to know, do you have a favorite Shakespeare play or even a quote?
Well, this is a boring answer, Alana, but my favorite Shakespeare play is probably Romeo and Juliet. Maybe Hamlet's a close second. I like Romeo and Juliet because I don't know what the issue is with us like loving our hearts broken when we're watching something, but there's no greater heartbreak than to like relive like this beautiful love. So I like the 1968 TV version actually of Romeo and Juliet, and I probably watch it like once a year. So I just watched it over the Christmas break. So.
And it really is a YA story, a story of young love that's treated with such depth and gravity.
Absolutely. And I love that because that's what I do in my books. I don't treat teenagers like they're kids. Like this is this moment in life where you're like graduating from being a kid and you're like going into adulthood. So I love that Shakespeare told that story from such a mature point of view.
Brianna asks, what inspired you most while writing this story?
Oh, I love this. Brianna, what's her name? It was music. I mean, I listened to so much music. I was touched. Like I said, I fell in love with Haley Kilgore from Once on This Island. I mean, I did that musical in college, and when I heard her voice, I remember where I was when I heard her voice. For the first time, and it just touched my heart. I listened to a lot of love songs. There's a song by Chrisette Michelle called "A Couple of Forevers," which to me became like Jersey and Zeppelin's song. There is another one by H.E.R. and Daniel Caesar called "Best Part," and it's a beautiful love song. I listened to a lot of Stevie Wonder. Because, oh my God, he's like a poet. Stevie Wonder is the Shakespeare of our time, quite honestly. If you want a modern day Shakespeare, listen to Stevie Wonder and like really listen to his lyrics. So it was definitely music.
Is there any chance you would share one of your playlists with fans?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Here's a question, no name attached. What is one of the most interesting things you learned while researching and writing any of your books?
Interesting. I think that when I wrote The Voice in My Head, I did a lot of research on the wave. So because this family in The Voice in My Head takes this trip from Seattle and they go to this thing called the wave. And so I had to do like some intense research to make sure like I authentically tell the story. And I just became obsessed with the wave. I mean, Google it. It's like at the Utah-Arizona border. It's like this beautiful sort of like rock structure. And I really like, it's definitely like on my list of things I have to do. I have to visit there and I have to take that hike. So that was probably one of my most exciting things to research and learn about. And hopefully one day I'll have like my own pictures of visiting the wave. So.
Very cool. Rebecca Monroe would like to know, what was the hardest part of adapting a classic into something fresh and modern?
That's such a good question. I think The hardest part was adapting it to make it fresh and modern. And I thought it was a fun way by putting a musical inside the story. Because when you read the book, if you've read the book already, or if you're just starting, the story is really Jersey's story, which is a girl who's auditioned for Broadway and she's now an understudy. But the story within the story is the story of Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet have been sentenced to multiple lives on Earth until they meet up again and right their wrong. And I just thought it was such a cool idea to sort of like make it like a Hamilton style musical where it's diverse. We're casting, people of color to play these lead roles, and we're also rapping. Like, how cool would that be? So,
Following up on that, Cindy Carver asks, do you have plans for more YA retellings?
yes, absolutely. I mean, I would love to just write my whole life, you know. I can't even imagine like retiring. Like I have this image of myself like as like a 90-year-old woman, like hunched over my laptop, like with my cup of coffee, still telling stories because I just enjoy it so much. I just outlined a novel and I'm ready to start, writing my chapters. And I joked to my editor that, well, here begins 2021 with me like in front of my computer. And I was like, but let's just keep it real. I wouldn't want it any other way. So yes, the answer to that is yes. I want to tell as many stories as I can. Yeah.
Here's a question. You mentioned a daughter. Is she old enough to read any of your books yet?
My daughter is 9 years old. Her name is Cameron, but we call her Cam or Cam. Some people call her Cammy. And no, she's not old enough to read my books yet. But she definitely tries because my books are kind of like all over the house. And sometimes like I'll catch her like reading my books. And I'm like, no, you can't read that. And she's like, why? I don't get it. So I'm trying my hardest to keep her from reading the books, but I know one day. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to sneak into my mom's room and read books I wasn't supposed to read. I remember when I was 9 years old, I read Flowers in the Attic. Same age as my daughter. 9-year-olds should not be reading Flowers in the Attic. So I'm sure eventually she'll read them. So.
Well, are there any books you're reading together or that you've specifically handed to her to read at this time?
Right now, she just finished Holes, actually.
Oh, great.
She loves books that are movies. And for some reason, she likes to watch the movie first. And
Interesting.
So we watched Holes, and then she just finished reading it over the holiday. So.
Oh, very cool. Amanda Jenkins says her daughter loved both Star versus the Forces of Evil and She-Ra, and she would like to know, do you have plans to do any other voice acting?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I continue to do it. I'm still a part of the cast of Craig of the Creek, and we're in our 4th season. I've been doing some other shows that I'm not quite allowed to say yet. But yes, there'll be lots of voiceover coming from me in 2021. I'm very excited about that.
Great. She also would like to know, do you have a dream project?
As far as like voiceover goes?
Or acting work, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. I love like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I want to do. I love voiceover. And I was on this show years ago called Motor City for Disney XD. And it was sort of like these kind of crazy kids living underground. And I just like loved that series. So I definitely love to be on a series like that. I would love to be on like a young series, like a Mickey Mouse sort of Clubhouse sort of series. Because I just have such good memories of like when my daughter was young. And Mickey Mouse like got us through like some hard times. Like it was just like, here's Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and then she would just calm down. So I have such a heart for kids and like quality programming that is good for kids. So I definitely, I also would love to like do a series about music, like teaching kids about music, because I think we have to keep kids learning about like music in a way that they can make it a part of their career. So that's really important to me. Sort of like a Sesame Street, but for music.
Oh, very cool. Divana Marcano asks, is writing for television something you're interested in as well? You have some good ideas, obviously.
Definitely. I've been studying the beats for script writing, and I actually have a writing partner right now, and we're working on a feature film pitch. So that's definitely, hopefully, in the cards for me in 2021. Working really hard at it right now. So, yeah.
And Shayna Plummer would like to know, if this book, Roman and Jewel, were made into a movie, who would you cast?
Oh, when I was working on it, I always had, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, but Sky Jackson did from Bunked. I always had her in my mind as Jewel. And I think I made like, I'm sorry, it's Jersey. And I think I made Zeppelin like so unbelievably like otherworldly attractive that I haven't actually seen someone yet that I feel like is my Zeppelin. So I'm still looking at the actors out there right now.
The casting call will say ethereal beauty.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. Before we wrap up, I would like to know, could you talk a bit more about what you're working on now? You mentioned a new project.
Oh, actually, I can't.
All right.
But hopefully, I'll be able to talk about it very, very soon.
Mm-hmm.
Within the next like week, actually, hopefully. So, but it's pretty exciting and new. So, yeah.
Very good. New year, new book.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dana. This was a real treat.
Yeah, this was exciting. Thank you so much. I loved all the thoughtful questions. So, appreciate it.
Great. And thanks to everyone watching at home. Once again, I've been speaking with author Dana Davis about her new YA novel, Roman and Jewel, which is out now from Inkyard Press. Tune in for our next event on January 13th with authors Maika and Maritza Mulit, who will be discussing their new YA novel, One of the Good Ones. You can sign up at publishersweekly/Books on Tap Live for a reminder about the event, and we hope to see you then.